this video, we're going to put together a Node.js server, and we're going to use this server to kind of like create a template for all of the future projects that we're going to build together. So we're going to take care of everything like the routing or the folder structure, errors, and most of the basic stuff that we need to do. And then we're going to push this new project into GitHub so we can later use it to create different type of applications for the backend. So in order to get started, you need to have Node.js installed in your computer. So make sure you go to nodejs.org and you download and install Node. If you already have Node, you can confirm in your terminal by checking node-v. Right now I have version 20.9.0, but anything higher than this will work. Also, in order to get started, I already created a new folder. In the folders, you can create a folder in any location you want. You can call it server template, so we can have the same names and we can follow everything together. And then you can open that folder with VS Code. When you open this folder with VS Code, you can open a terminal so we can start creating our project from the terminal. I'm also going to have a new tab here in my browser so I can test some of the routes later on. So make sure you can pause the video, set that up, and whenever you're ready, continue watching the video. So now that we have a new folder, we're going to initialize our projects. First, inside of the server template project, this is the main folder of our application. We're going to create a new SRC folder where we're going to put all the source code. And we're going to, inside of the SRC, we're going to put a index.js file. And then in our terminal, let's make sure we are in the main folder, server template. So you can confirm that in there, or just type pwd to make sure you are inside of your server template. Once you're there, we're going to type our npm command to install all the dependencies that we're going to need. So before we reinstall the dependency, let's initialize a new npm project by typing npm init-y. And this will generate a package.json with all the default values for our project. So it's just going to grab the name of the folder for the name, version, everything is going to be like the default values in here. We also have the main file, which is pointed to the index.js. This is fine. Now that we have initialized and generated this package.json, we can install the dependencies that we're going to need. Here we're going to type npm I. We're going to install Express, and we're going to install, let's install Helmet. And I'll tell you everything about Helmet in a second. Helmet. Let's hit enter there. And then we're going to also install some depth dependencies. These dependencies are only going to help us develop the application, but they're not needed in production. So we're going to run npm I-D for development, and we're going to install Morgan and NodeMon as well. So Morgan and NodeMon are going to help us to develop this application, but they're not needed when we're in production or when we deploy our applications. So here we have all the dependencies that we need for the moment, Express and Helmet, and the depth dependencies that we're going to need to get started as well. So in every application, we're going to probably need these 4 dependencies. So that's why we're going to install it here in the template that we're going to reuse throughout different applications. So now we have created the different, installed the different dependencies. We created the SRC folder, our index.js. Now let's stay here in the package.json and let's do some configuration here. We can add a description if we want here. We can say Express server app, the short description. We can keep the main pointing to the index.js. Here we also need to set the type to module, so we can use the ES5 modules instead of the common.js. So here we're going to keep type to module, that's fine. And then inside of the scripts here, we're going to generate two scripts here that are going to help us run our application. So here we're going to create the start script, and we're going to run node index.js. So when we run this script from the terminal, we're going to run npm star, and this is going to execute node index.js so we can start our application. But in development, we're going to use the script dev, which is just going to run nodeman index.js. And that's the one we're going to use now, but we can test both of them in a second. Let's see, we have the dependencies, we have the module. You can add your name here. So you can type your name if you want. So you can add it to your project, and then everything else here could remain the same for now. So we're going to close this up for now because we're ready. So right now we initialize our project. We created our folder structure just for the src and the index.js. And we can also create a new file. So inside of the main folder, so make sure you click in the main folder, create that git ignore. So we can have this ready for later for when we push to GitHub. We can type node_modules because sometimes I forget to put my git ignore and I don't want to forget. So this is just the things we don't want to push to GitHub. So we're going to tell Git to ignore the current folder, which is the one we have here. And also we can put the .env files just in case we create some of these later. We just always want to have that there. We can close that up now. So now we're ready to put up, to create our basic Express server. The first thing we're going to do here in index.js will be to import Express from Express. And now we can use the import statements because we set that into our project here. And with Express imported, we can create our app equals Express. This is going to be our application. And then we can create a port variable, so we can set it to process.env.port, or we're going to, in development, we're going to run this in port 4000. So that way this is ready for when we deploy. Let's say we deploy to a platform like Render or AWS. Those platforms will set the port that they want to run your application, but in development we're going to run it in 4000. So we just want to have this in place for when we deploy is already there. Let's see what else we need to do. Here we can just scroll down and we can do a app.lesson. So in the app.lesson, we're going to pass in the port we want to listen for. We want to listen to requests on port 4000. That will be passing here. And then we can pass in a callback here and just console log server running on port, and then pass in the port that we're listening in. All right, we're going to keep it basic now so we can test our scripts so we can see if the application can run. Just to go and make sure we test everything little by little. So in the terminal here, if we type ls or ll, we can see we have all the files and folder here. If we type npm star, that will execute the star script, which is going to run npm star. Let me see, can I find module index? That's because we have it inside of the folder. So if we go here and change this to src/index, and then here src/index. Forgot to put the src folder here. Now if we try to run that again, npm start will run this script right over here. And it says that it's in use. You might not have this error. Looks like I have another terminal running. Let me see if I try to run it again now. npm start. All right, so now npm start is console login, server is running on port 4000. You probably didn't get that if you didn't have any other terminals open. So now we tested that this script is working. So we're going to stop this one, hold control and press C to stop the terminal. And then we're going to type here npm run and dev. So now we're going to execute this script here, and we're going to run nodemon index src index.js. And what nodemon is going to do is that during development, nodemon is going to watch our files for any changes, and every time we save our files, the server will restart automatically, which is something that won't happen if we run it with just node src index.js. So now we have the server running, and if we make any changes here, if I just hit Control S, you can see how the server restarts and look at any changes that might have happened in the file. So that's good. We tested these scripts. Let's see what else we can do here. So the next thing we're gonna do, we're going to set up, and let's see if we have, let's set up the public folder. So inside of src here, we could, let me see, let's do not in src, let's click outside, create a new folder, call it public. And this folder is where we're going to put all the public files that our server can serve to any browser that requests our server. So here, what we're going to do, we're going to put a index.js, and we're going to put a CSS file just so we can have like a welcome page in our program. So here, in order to do that, we're going to, let's create a new index.html file, and let's create a new main.css. So here we're going to just use the basic template. So if we hit shift exclamation and hit enter there, you get the template here for the HTML page. Here we can call this API, let's see, docs or something like that. We can call it API docs. Yeah, that's fine. And then in the h1 here, you can put a little h1 here that says API or welcome to my API, something like that. Yeah, we can say just API or my API. Doesn't matter. This is just for have something default here that we can later reuse. And then we're going to also have a CSS file. In the CSS, all we need to do here for now, let's just have a basic box sizing, and let's do border box, and then we're going to set the background dash color to, let's just do black, and let's have the color to white. Let's also do text dash align center, and let's just keep it here just to test that this is being applied to the index. So in the index now, I can open this to the right, and in the index we can link this together now. So let me make this a little bit smaller. Right on top of the title here, we can have a link. Let's just type a link and pick the CSS one, and instead of style.css, we call it main.css, and that should be linked together now. So we have our basic HTML page and our basic CSS in here as well. Now, in order for the app to be able to serve these, we're going to go back to the index here, and we're going to set some middlewares here. So in line 7 here, let's just have a comment here. Let's say middlewares. So middlewares are functions that are going to be executed in between the request and the response cycle in order to do some type of actions that we need to do. So in the middleware here, we're going to use the app.use method from Express, and we're going to set the express.static middleware, and we're going to say that we need to serve the public folder as static, so that way we can have access to these files anywhere in the application. So as soon as we set this up, we could test our server now, because now we should be able to visit localhost here in the browser. We could type localhost, make this a little bit bigger, and we say we're running on port 4000, and we can hit enter, and we get the welcome to my API file, which is this one here. So this is being served, and now we have access to the main. If we didn't have that, if we comment this out and we try to refresh this, we get a cannot get / because the files are not being served inside of the application at the moment. So we need to set this up in here. Now if I do it again, it gets served as soon as we go to the main route, which is just / here at the beginning. Okay, let's see what we have so far. So we did our app lesson, we have our public folder, we have the HTML, CSS, we have the middleware, which is the static middleware, and we're serving the public folder as a static folder. So anything that we put there should be available to the public. That's why it's named public. Now, if we try to, let's say, visit another page, let's say we have a new route. Let's do some routes here. Let's do route, and we're going to set up a new route here. So app.get, so we're going to set a get route, which is going to be to / let's do docs, and then here we're going to pass in a callback like this, which is going to receive the request and response in order for us to get the request that is coming in and send a response back to whoever sent the request. So here, let me see here what we're going to do. We're just going to have a res.send, and we're going to send the string docs ... just so we can test this out. Cool. So here we have, look at the structure of the application. Here we have all the imports, all of our variables. We can put a comment here. We can say vars, so we can have some separation here. Middlewares are going to go here. So the order in where we define all of these are going to really matter, because all the code is going to be executed from top to bottom, and the order the middlewares are going to be executed is going to be from top to bottom. So we have more middlewares. We're going to put it right under this. Before we hit any of the routes, we need to have all the middlewares, and then when we get the routes, we're going to have later some here we're going to have a catch all route, which we're going to do in a little bit. And then also at the bottom, we're going to have some errors section here, which we're going to do in a bit. Let me put some indication here that this is a new section. and then this could be down here. That's fine. So all the variables are going to be here. All the middlewares are going to be in this section. All the routes are going to be in this section. We're going to have a catch all routes, and then some errors, error middleware in here that we're going to set up in a bit. So now let's see if we can also test this with Postman, because right now, let's see if we make a request to /docs, we're going to get a, I did a little typo here. It was supposed to be a dot instead of a comma. So let me refresh this, and we get the string here. So that's good. If we go back to the home page here, we get the index.html. So this is fine. This is being sent. But what if we do visit another page, like let's say I don't know, Monday or something? We're gonna get this error. Cannot get / whatever we type there. So in order to guard against this, we can have a catch all routes down here, where we can use a app.all, and then we're gonna pass in a asterisk, which is, it means anything else. We're going to then pass in a callback function here again, and our callback functions are always going to receive, if it's a request handler, a regular request handler, we're going to pass in the request and response. And here what we're going to do right now, we're going to just say res.status. We're going to set the status to 404.send. We're going to say page not found. And we can even make this in H1 if we wanted to, like this. Cool. Now if we refresh here, we get page not found. If we go back to the home page, it's fine. If we go to /docs, we get the docs. But if we go to anything else, it could be anything, we get page not found, because this is being handled by this catch all routes. Later, we're gonna make this error a little bit better with more structure. But for now, this is going to be good enough. So let's see, what else we got? Let's do a test with, we can have Postman. So if you don't have Postman, you can have Postman as a separate app, like I have it here, or you can get the extension. You can search here for Postman, and you can get this extension and install it. I already have it here, so I can just go and open it here in order to use it and test some of my other routes. And let me put this to the right. Let me just drag it, because that didn't work. And now we can also test all of the routes. Let's say if we need to test with a post, a put, any other type of request, we're going to use Postman. And now if we make the request to localhost http localhost, and then is http //localhost 4000, we get the HTML document that says welcome to the API. If we make a request to /docs, we get the string docs in here. Cool. If we make it to anything else, we get status 404, page not found. Cool. That's everything we need so far. So we got our basic structure here. Now the thing is that right now we don't see the request coming in. So every time I make a request, our backend doesn't show me anything in here. It's not logging any of the requests that I'm receiving. So for this, we're going to use a Morgan. So we can import Morgan here. So right after Express, we can import Morgan from Morgan. And then we can set this. Remember, this is a middleware. Morgan is a logger middleware that is going to console log all the requests that are coming into your server. So after this one, we can just do, or we can even have it before. No, that's fine. Here we can do app.use, and then we can call Morgan, and we can pass in the string dev. There are different options that you can set, but dev is one of the ones that are more helpful. So now if we make a request to the server again, refresh in here, we see that we get a get request to this blah, 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 whatever that was here. And then the status code and the seconds that it took. So if we make this request, let's say send here, this one is not going to show because this one is being served by the static middleware because it's the root route. But if we make a request to, let's say docs here, we can see that we got a get request to /docs, which ended in a 200 status code, and those are the milliseconds that it took. So now we can see all the requests that are coming in. Now if I send a post request and hit send, you can see that we have a post request, but it ended up in a 404 because we don't have any posts. We only have a get method here for now. Okay, so let me make this a little bit smaller. No, that's fine. We can keep it here. That's fine. I can click it there. So now we have Morgan in place. We can see all the different requests that are coming in. And now we're going to, let's see, we have Morgan, we have a catch-all routes. Now, let's say we have let's start working on different routes. So we have at the moment one route, which is the /docs, but now we can also have routes for any other resources that we are going to have in our application. And these are going to be API routes because they're going to be serving, they're going to be listening for requests. They're going to be accessing maybe our database later, and they're going to be sending back data to some client, some browser. So in order to do that, let's go and create a new routes folder. So here inside of src, we can close the public folder. We're done with that for now. And let's create a new routes folder. Routes inside of src. Inside of routes, we're going to create, let me put this here so you can see this a little bit better. Inside of routes, we're going to create a new, let me see, let's do a health check. Let's create a new file. Let's call this one health-check.js. And here we're going to create some routes that are going to just give us a kind of like a health check to see if our server is running. So let me split this to the right so we can keep it on the right hand side, and then we're going to keep this on the left hand side. So here what we want to do is that we want to set some routes that are going to be specifically for health checks. Later we can do a routes for users, for products, for whatever we're building in our backends. So here we're going to have in routes, put a little here indication that this is another section. Here we want to have a route for our API. So let's say we're going to have a app.use here. We can set this, we can put a prefix to /API /v1 for version 1 of our API. then /health-check. And then here we can pass in a router that is going to handle any request that comes into this endpoint here. So any request that comes into /API, /v1, /health-check is going to be handled by a router that we're going to define. So before I save this file, we can go into the new health-check.js and we can import a router from Express. And then we can create a new router. And in the new router, we're going to have two methods. Let's do a GET request, and let's do also a PUT request. So for those, let's do here router.get. Notice here that router is what we use in that app, because this is kind of like a mini application, like a mini router that is going to handle the different requests to this specific endpoint. So this, we create the new router and then we attach the methods that we want to listen for to the router. So we're going to have a router.get. We're also going to have a router.post. And then we're going to export default router at the bottom. So here we're going to just have / because we don't, anything that comes into /API, /v1, health-check, and it's a get method is going to be handled by this. So this is just the / after. So basically this / here at the end in here, right? So if it's a GET request with that / is going to be handled here, but we don't need to specify here. We're just going to have it in here. So if we get a GET request to that endpoint, we're going to run a request handler here. And then we're going to do the same for the post, missing a T here. And this is going to be / also, because they're a different method. This is a GET method, this is a post method. They can have the same /. And then again, request and response here. And these are the two that we're going to put together for the health checks. So here, when we get a GET request, we want to respond with some data to the client that is making the request. So before we work on that, let me save it. And now let's import this router inside of index.js. So down here, we can say import health check router from, and then we're going to say /, where is, nope, not /, just /routes / healthcheck.js. Make sure it has the .js at the end, because if the modules that we create ourselves, they need to end up with the file extension here in order for this to work properly. Here we're getting an error because I've saved the file. So what we need to do is that this new router that we imported here, we can just paste it here, right next to the endpoint that we just created here. And now we have server running on port 4000. So again, any request that comes into /API, /v1, /health-check is going to be handled by this router, right? So it's going to get routed to this, and it's going to try to match it to a GET request or a POST request. If it's a GET request, we're going to response. This is just a health check. This is just something that we're going to have default, some endpoints that we can always test to see if the server is up. So we can say res.status. We're going to set a status of 200, meaning everything is okay. Then we're going to do the .json because we want to send some JSON data. So we're going to put a object, curly brackets here. And we want to send let's send a status property here. We're going to say healthy. Let's also send a date. And we're going to say new date dot to ISO string, so we can have the date. Then we're also going to have let's have the method, and the method that was used, we can get it from request dot method. So remember, request it has all the information about the request that is coming in, so like the method that they use, the IP, everything that is all the information that you have available from the request is there. Also, we're gonna set just a service. This is not required, but let's just set it to API, and then let's say a protocol, and let's send the request.protocol. So this is just some information, basic information that is just so we can display some more data when we respond back to the client. So these are not required. This is something just so we can have always when we test the endpoints for the help checks. So the help checks, remember, is just a way to check if our backend is working, all the routes are up and running. And it's a good way to kind of like get started with matching our endpoints to our routers. So now if we test this up, if we go here and we send a request to /API/b1/health-check. Remember, this endpoint here needs to match this API v1 health check, and don't forget the dash in the middle. If we make a get request, it's going to get here. It's going to get routed to this health check router, which is this on the right hand side. If it's a get method, it should respond with this information here. So if we hit send here, make sure it's in a get request, you will get the response here at the bottom. You can see we got a JSON object with the status, healthy, the date, the method that was used, the service, and the protocol as well. So we got some good information in there just for testing. Let's do one more. Let's have some information here. Let's do / and then 2 asterisks here, and let's do what information can we put in here? Let's do add a method, so we can kind of like document a little bit these methods that we're creating here. This is good enough. We know what's happening here. We're just gonna put this as a get method, and down here let's do one for add method, and let's do pose, so we can see where these begins and ends, and it's a little bit more clear when we read our code. So for the post request, in the post request, we're going to be expecting some data, right? Whenever you have a get method, get is going to get some information from the server. A post is when the client is sending some information from the front end, like from a form, maybe your email and password to try to sign in or things like that, or any type of data that the client needs to send to the backend. Here in our health check, we're just going to expect, we're just going to call it kind of like a payload. Payload could be anything that they're sending, any type of data. So let's do so we're going to be expecting some data inside of the request.body. In every single time you send data from the client, the data is going to be available in the property called the body of the request. So we can destructure, let's do curly brackets equals request.body, right? So from request.body, we're going to expect a payload property to be sent. There's going to be some type of data in there, And then we're going to use that to respond back to the user just to see if everything is working fine. So here we're going to say res.status again. We can send this to, let's do also the 200 and then do .json. We could have just copied some of the stuff that we did here down, but that's fine. It's not too much. Let's set here the status. Let's set it to, let's just do received. And then let's do the method. Method was, let's get it from the request. That method. What else we did? We did the dates. Let's put the date here as well. It doesn't matter where it is. Let's just put it here for consistency. New date dot to ISO string. Call it. And then let's also pass in what else we have. Let's put the service that we did at the top. Let's just put it to single quote, double quote, doesn't matter. JavaScript doesn't care. API and then protocol. Let's do request.protocol. And finally, let's just send the payload or the information that they're sending. So the only difference here is that now we have a post method. So we're going to be expecting some data in a property called payload inside of the body. And then we're going to send it back just to confirm that this is actually working, right? I just wanted to do one more so you can see the difference between post, and I also can show you a new middleware that we're going to need in order to receive information in our backend. So here we have the payload. That's fine. That's everything we need to do here. So now if we go to Postman here and we change the method to post, we're going to keep the same endpoint. We just need to change the method to post so we can match to this one. Now we can, in order to send data from Postman, you can click on body here. So at the top you have all the options for the request. At the bottom is for the response. So at the top here, we click bodies for the request that we're about to send. Click on body, click on raw, and then here from the drop down, select JSON. So now that we have JSON here, we need to pass in a empty object, which is, this is going to be the body that we're going to send, right? The request.body. This is going to be that object, the body. Inside of the body, we're going to have in double quotes, let's say payload, colon, and then here we're going to say just some data for testing. Oops. Here we need double quotes because this is JSON data that we're sending, right? This is JSON. This is not a regular JavaScript object, which we can use either single quotes or double quotes. So now if we try to send this, if we hit send, we're going to get an error. And the error here, if we scroll up in the terminal, is going to say post post method. We gotta request a post request to API /v1 /help check, which ended in a 500. And in the type error says cannot destructure property payload of request.body as it is undefined. So right now, what this means is that our request.body is undefined. And it is undefined because we need to set a middleware that is going to parse the data that is coming in on the post request, and it's going to parse and add that data into the request.body property for us. In order to do that, we got to go back to the index.js. Inside of the middlewares, we're going to, right after the Morgan one, we can use app.use, and then we can set express.json. And that should be everything we need, but let's set up one more for the future, which we can also send data in the URLs, something that you might need to do it later. So let's just have it set in here. So app.use, we're gonna use express.url encoded, so we can send data inside of the URL, and then we're gonna set extended :true. Extend, no, it needs to be into an object here. So curly brackets extended and then true. So now we're able to send data in the request.body and also in the URL as well. So we're just gonna have that in place for letter use. So now if we try to send, make sure your server is back up and running after you save the file. And now if we send it again, in here, we're going to hit send. And now we got the status received, the date, a method, service, protocol that was used, and the payload with the data that we sent, this data here. So this is working now. We have set up our middleware. We set up our routes here for the help check router, which will handle any request that comes into this endpoint. Later, we're gonna have one for maybe the user or authentication for products, anything that you need to build API routes. You're gonna prefix it with this and then attach it to a router that is going to handle the different requests to this endpoint. Before we move to the next topic, let's just add some comments here. So /**. Here we can say add, let's do method. Method is get. And we can also set the add path. And the path is /docs. We can later set up some maybe Swagger documentation. That's another package that will generate API documentations for you. So I just want to have this in place to do it later. And that's probably something that you want to do for all your different APIs. So that's why I'm doing these steps here, so we can have it in place. Then we also can do, let's see, we can have, let's just have a little message here. No, this is fine. This is very clear to where is it going and where's it being passed to. This is fine for now. And now in the next step, we're going to set up some error handling for the application, which is something that we also need to have in all of the applications that we create for our backends. So for that, let's see where we're going to start. Let's start by creating a new folder inside of SRC. And we're going to call this one errors. And inside of errors, we're going to declare a new class for each one of the errors that we want to create. So for example, at the moment here, we have a response being sent if we don't match any routes to the request that is coming in. This is being sent to the client, and we're sending res.status /4, and then we're sending a message here. The problem with this is that if we do this in every single place inside of our application, errors are going to be different. They're not going to have a single structure. So it's better to have different errors that are going to look the same, and they're going to be easier to manage in the back end and in the front end as well when they get received. So inside of errors, we're going to create a new file. Let's call it not found -error.js. And on this one, this is going to be super simple, but it's going to keep the same structure for any other error that we create later on. So here we're going to export default, a new class, and we can call this one not found error. And then on this one, we're going to set a new property to the class. It's going to be the status code. And we're going to set this one because this is a not found error. We're going to set it to 404. And then inside of the constructor, we're going to also do something here, but I forgot to extend. We need to extend the error class. So we're going to say class not found extends the class error. So we can now, inside of the constructor, we can call the super, which is the constructor of the error class, so there's of the super class, which is this one, and we can pass in a message here saying not found, like so. We can also have a method here that for this one, it's not going to make too much of a difference, but is in case we need to add more errors to this class or more error messages, we're going to have a serialize error or errors. And we're going to have this one just return a new array with a message of not found as well. And all of the different classes that we create later, they're going to look really similar. They might have more error messages and some more logic in here, but they're going to follow the same structure that we have here. So we're extending the error class, we're creating our own class, and we're setting a status code to 404. And then we're calling the constructor of the error class, and we're passing the message not found. So we can reuse this one throughout our application whenever we need to throw a new not found error. And now that I said throw error, the way that Express works is that every time you throw a new error, Express has a default error middleware that is going to catch this error. And then we can create some logic. We're going to create a custom middleware that is going to be able to see the error that was thrown and is going to respond to the client in a more structured way. Let me just fix this here that I saw here. And we're going to put that together in a second. So this is everything we need to do here. So we can close this up. And now what we're going to do is that let's bring in the error here. So let's say import not found error from /errors/ not found error. Make sure it has the .js at the end in here. Cool. So now we're going to use this new error here, and we're going to replace this here. So now anytime that we need to throw an error, we're going to use a custom errors that we're going to be creating. So let's replace this line here, and I'm going to show you what we're going to put that later. We're going to say throw and then we can say not found error in here, and then we can call it. And let's put the keyword new here so we can call the constructor. So throw a new error, and then let's see what else we need to do. That's fine for now. So we imported the error. We throw in the error here if we cannot match any if we cannot match the request to any of our routes. We're throwing this error here, the not found, and then anytime we throw an error, Express is going to run our error middleware automatically. So we need to just define a new error middleware here. So now anytime that we throw an error from any file in our application, is going to direct that to the error handling middleware that we're going to define here. So before we put it in here, let's create a new middleware folder inside of src, new folder, middlewares for our custom middlewares here. Let's create a new error handler middleware, error handler.js here. And for this one, we're going to export default a new function, error handler, and here we're going to receive 4 values, and this is what is going to tell Express that this is a custom error handler middleware whenever we have 4 different arguments being received here. So we're going to receive the error, and then we're going to receive the request, response, and the next function here. If you're not familiar with the next function here, the next function is where the one we can call to signal Express to go to the next middleware in the middleware stack. But here all we need to do is that we're going to set up some if statements. Here we're going to set up an if statement if we have a not found error. So we're going to have a if statement here. Let's import the error that we're trying to set up in here. So we're going to import not found error here. Make sure it has a .js at the end. And then we're going to check if the error, right? So if this error is a instance of not found error, then we're going to response, we can do return res.status, and then we're going to pass in the error.status for the status, and then here we're going to do .send, and we're going to send a new object here, which is going to have the errors property, and then we're going to set that to error.serialize errors function. Right, so remember in the error we handle the information about the status code and the message, and the serialize if we have many different messages coming out of this error. But if we go here, in here we're inspecting the error pretty much to see if it was a type of instance of not found error. And if it is, we're just going to send the status code that is provided, and we call that serialize function in here. We can also have a default here, so if it doesn't match this, we can have a default one that's going to be res.status 500 5500 .send, and then here we can follow the same structure. We can have an array with a object that says message, and with the message something went wrong. That means we don't know what happened and it just went really bad in the backend. So this is going to be our default error in here, in case we don't match anything from the top here. Later when we have new type of errors, we're just going to have another if statement here, and we're going to check if it's a type of the next error that we're going to create, and then we're going to handle everything here to put it together. Now we can import this new error handler inside of index.js. So at the top here, we can do import error handler, make sure it has the .js at the end. And then this function, we're going to pass it to app.use at the bottom, and then we pass it in here. And this needs to be at the bottom because this should be the last middleware. This is a middleware that we created that we created ourselves, but this is a error middleware. It should be at the bottom after you try to execute any other middlewares and any other routes. If nothing matches, we have the error middleware at the bottom. So the location, all of these are important, so make sure you have everything in the right place. Your variables at the top, your middlewares, your routes, and then you can also have your other routes here, your catch all routes, and your error middleware at the bottom. Now let's see if we test this out. So if we go to Postman now, we should be able to make a request. Let's make a GET request to health check. Let's see if everything is working fine. We get the start of healthy. If we send this to something else, we put some random string here and we hit send. Look at the error message that we get. We get a object with the errors and then an array with the messaging here. So that's the structure that we gave it inside of the error that is being returned. So an array with a message inside, and then we are responding in here to the client. So that way everything keeps the same consistency and the same structure for the errors. Let's see, what have we accomplished so far? Let me just review what we have. We go back to the index. First, we initialize our Express application. We set up the port. We have this ready for deployment. When we deploy it during development, we're going to run in 4,000. We set up a static middleware so we can serve our public folder files. So anything that you put here will be accessible to the public, like the main index.html page and some CSS file. You can put more files in there. You can also have more folders if you want to create more type of static folders. Then we set up our Morgan middleware, which is the one that is giving us the logs at the bottom here in the terminal. The other two middlewares are going to be the one parsing the data that is going to come in either in the request.body or in the request URL. Then we set up some routes, one for the API routes, which is going to be routed to our health check router, which is in routes health check router, that this is just being used to test that the server is running and healthy. Then we set up a new route for the docs. Here we don't have anything implemented, but we can do that later. And finally, we have a catch route that is going to be throwing an error if we don't match if there's a request that doesn't match any of these routes. We're going to catch it here. We're going to throw a new error. And then that new error here is going to be catched by this error handler middleware that we created. And it's going to respond back with the information from the type of error that we use here. So here is where that's happening. We check if the type of error that happened is a not found error. If it is, we're going to use the status code and use the function here. And I think that's about it for the basic stuff that we need. So the only thing that I want to set up is that for to keep this as a template that is everything with all the files and folders that we need. Instead of src, we can create a new controllers folder, and then we can also create a new let's create a models, not a file but a folder, src new folder models. So in the next video, what we can do, we can set up some new models for like the user. We can have controllers for our authentication and user CRUD. So we can work on that later, but I want to have those folders in there. So when I create my, when I reuse this template, I don't need to create those folders every single time. So everything else that is here is reusable. Let me check on the package.json here. We already use Express. Oh, we didn't set up helmet. So let's see what helmet is going to help us do. And then we already use Morgan, and NodeMon is what we run in the development server with. So helmet is going to add some security to our application. If we open up the Postman again, and I go again to http://localhost:4000. If I hit enter there, we get this response here. We got the HTML file, but inside of the headers here, we can see that there's some information about the server that we created. So it says it's powered by Express, and it has some more information here. So some of this information can be used to attack our backend. So this is not something that we want to keep open to anyone that could be looking for service to attack. So maybe some hacker or something like that. So we could use helmet to hide some of that information, and also to set some headers that are going to also add more security to our application. So if we go back to index, and we can import, let's import helmet right under Morgan here. So import helmet from helmet. Now let's add that right under this one here. That's fine. So we're just going to keep it together, and then call helmet in here. And that's it. That's all we need to do. So before we test it out, let's go back to the Postman tab. And look, we have the power by, and then some more information, the date, connection, and pretty much that's all the headers that were being set. But now helmet, when we make another request, and that didn't change anything. Let's see, this is saved. That is saved. Helmet from helmet, and it's being used here. Let's try to make a request to / docs, because maybe it's not getting all the headers from there. So let's send another one here. There we go. So now we don't see the power by, and now we have some headers that are going to block some of the actions that the client can perform after they make a request. So some of this information, you can read some about this inside of the NPM website. And if you look for helmet, it can tell you everything that is going to set up for you. So if we search for helmet here, in here, all of these different headers that are being set up for you are these here. And they have a little explanation of why they're being set and why are they important. So you can read through this a little bit if you're not familiar with this package. And I think pretty much that's it. We're in a good place to, let me test this again. We got an error here. This is in the browser, that's fine. And here, I think we're good to stop and add this project to GitHub. So that way we keep this template separately, and then we can just reuse it to build something else. So let me just stop this server here, and let's make sure we got the that get ignored. We have the node modules in there, and then we can close all of these files. Now here we can do, inside of this folder, we can do git init, or if you use the GitHub desktop, you can do it through GitHub desktop. But I'm going to initialize a new GitHub repository. You can see how this is now going to be tracked in a second. Because we're ignoring this is not highlighted. But now we're going to add all of these files by running git add dot, and then git commit -m. We can just say template server completed. And then we just need to add a new repo to the project and push it to GitHub. So I'll let you do that one. And in the next video, we'll try to start with the user model and work on some of the authentication and learn about JWT tokens. We can also do cookies and a few other things about using Mongoose and .env to connect to a database. So that's it for now. I can see you in the next video.